One of the best ways to develop other people is through delegation. It's a classic tool that you need to understand. Most people understand what delegation is, but doing it effectively is a whole nother ballgame. Delegation in a nutshell is the idea of scoping out a little chunk of new work that you can give to a willing and able person below you in an effort to develop them professionally. Sounds easy, but in practice, I often see people have certain hiccups that are really worth mentioning to help you avoid them. The first is that you delegate when you're simply too busy to get everything done. Your plate's overflowing, and so you find something that's not too fun, some mundane work, and you give it to someone else in the name of delegation. I can promise you they'll see it for what it is. Dirty work you simply didn't have time for. That's not productive. I want you to think about this. When's the right time to fix the roof? Not when it's raining, but when it's not raining. You have to find a meaningful chunk of work, not just overflow. That's the first hiccup. The second is that people often delegate something they feel is safe, like a tiny sliver of a new task, instead of something they should think about, which is a larger, full, complete project. I want you to think about the difference between a task and a project. If you want delegation to be motivational and actually help someone step up professionally, your goal is to give them something that resembles a project more so than a small, tiny task. Oddly, if you give them something too small, even for the right reasons, it can be demotivational because they think that you think they're not ready for something more. Third big hiccup I see is when people ask others to step up and they give them some nice piece of work, but they fail to do the extra homework and give them the power and the authority to get the work done. So you give someone some work and they start talking to other people trying to accomplish the work, but others are questioning them and maybe hurting their confidence because you didn't tell everyone who's involved what you've done in trying to delegate. If you give somebody some work, you'd better make sure you give them the power and the authority to get it done effectively. Finally, last hiccup that's very common and real problematic is micromanaging. Someone finds a great chunk of work, they find the right employee, they do the delegation, but then it just bugs them so much that they have to follow up every 30 minutes. That's micromanaging. If you don't have enough confidence in someone to hand off the work and let them run with it, then you should not hand off the work, because micromanaging will have the opposite effect that you want. It will decrease motivation instead of increase motivation. In short, that's it. The most four common hiccups that I see in terms of delegating. Number one, they do it at the wrong time, meaning only when they're too busy. Number two, they often err on giving too little instead of a meaningful chunk that actually would motivate. Three, they fail to give the power and authority required to get the work done. And four, they indulge in micromanaging, which is never good. I want you to think about the fact that your employees each have a different developmental sweet spot. Don't assume you know whether you're delegating correctly or not. I want you to start a dialogue and figure out which ones are getting too little and which ones are getting too much. But you'll never know until you start that dialogue.